Hello everyone, welcome in. In this video, we will be going through another witness statement in the Alexee Trevizo case. This time it will be the triage nurse. I feel it is appropriate to follow the RN and ultrasound tech because he references some similar things and also had quite a bit of contact with Alexee. We'll keep moving throughout these witness statements, hopefully until the judge makes a decision on the evidence. Then I can maybe do one big video and go back through and discuss what will and will not be allowed to be talked about. So before I start, if I say anything positive or negative about the detectives or their questioning, it's not an end all be all. Those are just my thoughts and opinions on, how they're getting the questions and the answers out of the person they're interviewing, and any thoughts or opinions I have on the witnesses when I do these are not to belittle or, nothing's an end all be all when something good or bad happens in one of these interviews. It's just something to take note of. So if someone misstates something, or if I say a detective, kind of rushed a question or whatever, because I think that's what I thought when I was listening to this, it hasn't, there is a lot of leniency in this. They're not, they're trying to investigate something that happened months prior and things like that. So we will give some leniency to both the detectives and the interviewee. So with that being said, let's check it out.
I don't know if you've been briefed on anything. You're not in trouble. An incident happened in January on the 27th of this year. Do you remember it at all?
Yeah, I'm assuming the 19-year-old that was pregnant.
Right. Yeah. Can you tell us what happened, what you did with it, what from the beginning, from like when you first saw her to when you last?
Sure. So I triaged the patient.
Okay.
Brought her into our triage room, asked her some of the intake questions, and then moved her to a treatment room. I probably started an IV, gave some medications.
Okay. Anything else?
What was her chief complaint?
Chief complaint, I can't remember. I think it was abdominal pain or flank pain, something like one of those two.
Do you remember what treatment room you moved her to?
Possibly two. I think it might have been room two.
Okay. Anything helps you remember that?
No, just looking at, kind of thinking of the layout of the ER.
Gotcha. So you triaged her from, did you bring her in from the waiting room?
Yeah.
Okay, so you brought her in from the waiting room, took her in the treatment room, and then, you triaged her, you just got her chief complaint, did vitals?
Chief complaint, vitals. I believe the doc came in and kind of did a quick assessment in the triage room before we moved her back to a treatment room. Then from there we gave her some pain medication. She started feeling a little better, and then she said she needed to go have a bowel movement, and that's kind of when the whole thing happened.
So what did you do after that? So when she went to do the bowel movement, where were you at?
Initially, I was at the nurse's station, and then at some point I went and kind of checked on her, knocked on the door, seeing if she needed anything. She denied. She said she didn't need anything.
Did you hear anything?
I didn't hear anything.
Flushing the toilet flush?
Yes. After a while, I started hearing. So I probably checked on her 2 to 3 times. I'm not exactly sure. And then I just kept hearing paper towel dispenser and flushing and like the water running. And I knocked again. Did she need anything? Denied anything in it. Eventually, it got to a point where I said, "You need to come out." And I asked the clerk to get the key to unlock the door, because obviously she locked the door to go to the restroom. And whenever we finally had the key to unlock it, she opened it and just kind of walked out.
Did she say anything at that
She
point?
didn't say anything. She was just looking kind of straight past me and went back to the room.
Did you look into the restroom?
I did.
What did you see?
Went into the restroom and I saw a large amount of blood.
Where?
And it was on the floor. It appeared to like she had tried to wipe it up in places. It was kind of on the back wall behind the commode, the toilet. And so I said, "You okay? What happened?" And she said, "I'm on my period," she said. And she walked out. And then I went in.
Okay, just to pause there really quick, because that's a there's a little bit of inconsistencies in his statements. And again, if this ever is allowed to be played for the jury, or he testifies and Gary wants to reference this himself as a defense exhibit to say that you made an inconsistent statement, again, this would be so cherry picking and going to turn the jury off, because he's walking through a night that is whatever 3 months prior to this interview, almost to the day, 4:25, and it was 1:27. So it's like almost to the day, months later. And he said that she didn't say anything and she just stared at him and walked right out. But then he just said that she said she was on her period. That will be very good to clarify, because I believe whatever conversation happens when she exits the bathroom, since it's on the hallway video that the judge has indicated that will be probably allowed into evidence, statements made that people can see on that video, that they talked, or that those are statements referenced into the video that we're allowed to have. I believe everyone will be allowed to testify as to what was said, since we don't have audio. So it would be very interesting to clarify, did she give reason for the blood? I think that is important for the jury to hear, in my opinion, because it just adds another level of possible, deception and concealment to what she was doing. So yeah, just wanted to point that out.
At this point, we had already received the positive pregnancy lab test.
When was that?
I couldn't tell you the exact time, but I know prior to that, we got a positive pregnancy test on her.
Okay, prior to the bowel movement, did you tell her that y'all got a positive?
No, the doc hadn't been in there to tell her yet.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, so went in there, and I did look into the trash can at that time to see if there would have been anything tossed, but the liner was fresh and completely empty. I didn't pick up the can. Obviously, I would have known. I just looked in the can, and there was nothing in there. It was a fresh liner.
So there's no trash in the
there was
liner?
nothing in there. Yeah.
Do you know if they keep fresh liners? Because I know some places they put
There's usually
new
like a
liners
roll.
in the bottom of the
Yeah.
trash can, and then they put the liner in.
Exactly.
Take the trash out.
Right. That way, when they change it, they can just put a fresh one in. So yeah, there's usually a roll or a bunch of extra liners at the bottom of the trash can.
So you said there was blood on the floor, and it looked like some parts of it looked like it had been.
Right. It looked like it had been wiped up.
Well, and you said on the wall. Was there any on the toilet?
I think there might have been some at the bottom of the toilet. I don't remember if there was some like on the actual seat.
Okay. All right, and then so the doc hadn't told her that she had popped.
Not yet.
So because speaking with Vasquez, she.
And just to pause here, this is obviously the defense's whole claim, and it's also the whole claim for the wrongful death claim, is that they never told her she was pregnant and gave her medication and yada, yada, yada. Again, if you think a jury will buy that and feel that that negates Alexee's actions and the surrounding implied intent in her actions, then that, that remains to be seen. We'll have to see what a jury decides. But just again, another level of concealment with cleaning up the blood and putting a new trash can liner on it. Concealment is the name of the game in this, and those are the, if we reference back to how intent is defined in New Mexico law, you can infer intent from surrounding actions, because intent is rarely ever explicitly stated, right? You don't usually have someone on video with the knife or the gun going into the person's house saying, I'm going to stab this person to death. I'm here with this knife with intent to kill. You rarely get that, and they always say that was never the intent, right? But you get to infer the intent when someone goes into someone's house with a knife or weapon or something, and they leave and the person was injured. So that's kind of the same thing with what happened in this case. She went into the bathroom. There was no injured baby in the bathroom. After she leaves, there was an injured baby. And even though she is not saying that this baby was alive and I put him in the bag, the jury will get to infer that from all these surrounding instances. That's how the law in New Mexico works. So yeah, just another level of concealment.
Because she said it, and don't quote me on this, but like y'all did a urine and then a blood.
Right. So typically they'll do a urine, and that just tells you negative, positive, and then they do the blood. It kind of gives them a range of how far along.
So did the urine come back after as well, or so did all of it come back after she came back?
It probably all came back before.
Okay.
Before.
But the doctor would be the one to tell her.
Yeah, the doctor would be the one to go into the room and tell her. And after she came out of the restroom, that's when she went in to do a vaginal exam. Obviously, we didn't know what this blood was from. We were a little concerned that maybe she had, known that we were gonna figure it out and that she might have harmed herself or something in the restroom. So the doc wanted to go check her, but obviously that wasn't the case.
And how long have you been working here?
Here, about 5 years.
Okay. Yeah. So during your time, if someone were to pull the emergency cord have you been here when somebody's pulled that?
Yeah. For
so somebody
specifically.
Right. So if somebody pulled that cord, y'all would have known.
Oh yeah. The restrooms typically at every facility will give a different chime in a room, like a room call bell.
Right.
It's like more of an urgent chime, I guess I would say. Yeah, just so that way everyone knows it's not just your normal.
Right. And to your knowledge, that alarm never went off.
That alarm never went off.
Okay. So I don't know how much these detectives went over the things that they need to find to make this case with the prosecutor. I do assume that they had already met with the prosecutor after the autopsy comes back as homicide. So they likely have met with the prosecutor, and this question specifically makes me think either this detective is really good at trying to make sure bases are covered legally, or the state's attorney told them specifically to, we need to know that she did not try to get help and that they were negligent at the hospital, right? And so this is really taking away a whole lot of movement for Alexee, legally speaking, in her defense. This pull cord really helps prove the intent again that anyone who, I have to be careful when I say this is my opinion, but supposedly, allegedly, in my opinion, anyone who did not want to conceal the birth of that child would have pulled the cord to get help or flung the door open to get help, not entomb the baby and hide the baby and clean the bathroom up until the last possible second when someone comes with a key. That's just my opinion based off what it appears that we have now. If it's proven wrong in a court of law, we'll have to take it back. But as far as right now, this pull cord, it's very important, and I don't believe they ask many other people about it. I think this is the only person they ask about it. So no, he never, any of the chimes go off. They always go off when it's pulled. It has been pulled in his presence before, and she did not attempt to get help. And it was right there next to the toilet that she supposedly delivered the baby on. So with that being said, this is a very important, probably the most important question that the detectives could have asked in this interview, in my opinion. They could have, the one thing when I mentioned, like, don't think I'm shading any of the detectives or anything, is when they start, the other detective kind of glosses over the whole triage process, and they probably could have delved deeper and asked specifically, did you ask her if she was pregnant? What was her response at that moment? He does say that, she kept denying it, but I would like him to have elaborated on the exact conversation in the intake when that happened, but that's just my opinion. That's just what I prefer, but we can keep going.
So what occurred?
So after that, her and the patient went back to the room. The physician and a female nurse went in to do the vaginal exam just to make sure everything was good there. I believe, I wasn't in the room, but I believe that's when the doctor said, hey, your test came back positive for pregnancy. she adamantly denied it up to that point, even with me the entire time. She said she was a virgin. She's had her period every month consistently. So
Okay, so that's also very important, depending on how the judge rules about statements made before the crime, alleged crime, takes place, because that's really the only thing that I think she could find possibly questionable. I still think that there's pretty good case law saying that because a lot of these statements could be taken as to be in furtherance of this crime, the deception to be saying she's a virgin. You could weigh that she said it before and after the crime took place, and I do believe that the judge would make a decision saying this is in furtherance of the crime. It's relevant. It's not protected by, I believe it's Rule 405 of Rules of Evidence in New Mexico. So I do think that this is also very, very important because every single person who can verify the times and ways in which pregnancy was denied are going to continually reinforce to the jury that there was a deception going on, and there should be no deception from the get-go for any reason if she didn't know that she was pregnant, right? And so I think that is how the state's going to try and make all these statements play out, and so they are indeed very, very important to make it in.
So the doc was doing that.
Then you said that, and she told you that when you were
She told me that in
triaging.
triage,
Okay.
yeah, that she was a virgin and that she had her last pregnancy was just prior on that month and had
You mean period?
yeah,
You
sorry,
said pregnancy.
I'm sorry, yeah. Her period, she had them consistently every month.
Again, another very strong statement about the possible deception and concealment of this pregnancy and the possible crime that took place, because saying that you have a monthly period is very suspicious. By all accounts that I've been able to find medically, women can spot. Bleeding can happen throughout the pregnancy. Sometimes it's something to be alarmed of, sometimes it's just spotting. But the one common thread throughout everything I read was that it is not a consistent monthly period. So it does not present as a period. It is not the same as a period. And so this gets into very interesting, there might need to be medical testimony about this. If I was the defense, I would harp on the fact that she had her period every month, but it's a dangerous play because anyone can also be convinced that that's medically impossible. A lot of the science says that. I'm sure many of the doctors and the professionals on the stand will be allowed to testify to that fact. These are basically all medical professionals, right? So when a lay witness, which is just someone who was there, not an expert witness, wants to testify to a fact that should be more something considered like an expert witness, a lay witness can be able to say in their opinion what they thought was happening, or if they think something is plausible or not, because these people actually have medical training. So there might be an argument from the state that these people can also pontificate about the ability to have monthly, because these people are medical professionals, they may be able to testify as to the believability of the fact to have had a period every month. And the state may be able to say something as simple as, after questioning him about everything, like let's say this triage nurse in particular, maybe say, she said she had her period consistently every month. He would say yes. She could then say, in your medical opinion, is it common for women to have consistent monthly periods while being pregnant? He could say no. There might be an objection, or an objection from the defense on that. They'd have to sidebar or possibly argue as to the, witness being a lay witness or an expert. But this makes for interesting legal concept because it's like, well, they actually are medical professionals and they would know that absence of period is typically one of the signs of pregnancy. And I have seen circumstantial statements online from people saying they had their quote period throughout their pregnancy. But again, everything you read medically says that is not a period and it does not present as a period. Just because you're misreading it does not make it a period, and it's not consistent. And I know not everyone has their period be consistent, but generally the spotting is not, it doesn't present with the cramps. It doesn't present with, all the other stuff. If you're cramping and bleeding while pregnant, that's probably an issue and you should probably go to the doctor, right? So it's, I think, sorry to go off on a tangent here, but I do think it's a really interesting legal issue. And I think that these medical professionals might be able to testify to that fact, even though they're not experts, because there are ways to weasel in opinions on facts when you have certain qualifications as a lay witness. And these lay witnesses just so happen to be medical people. So it is quite interesting. Sorry if this part was choppy. I went off on a bunch of little tangents and explained way too much and way too deep, and it probably ended up not making sense. So if I just cut right there, that's why. Let's get back to it.
So then I started doing my charting, and then we called in the housekeeper to clean the restroom. We call it like a terminal clean, just when it needs to be mopped and everything. And then she felt the weight in the wastebasket, and then that's when we found the baby, and then moved it into the trauma room, trauma 2.
Did you find the baby? Did you see the baby
I saw the baby
in the trash can or
in the trash can. HT, he was there. He's another nurse, and Leela, she's the housekeeper. They initially found it, and I went over there and saw what they had.
And what exactly did you see when you looked in the trash can?
I think at that point they had already ripped the bag, but it was just laying, at the base of the trash can under the liner that they had pulled up. And there was like some paper towels in that bag with the baby. And then we moved it over and took it out, put it on the bed, stretcher.
So HT and Leela found it. What made you go to them? Did they tell you something? Or did you just go?
I believe Leela basically called out for HT, I think, and then he went over there, and then I went over there as well.
Okay, you went to go see what happened?
Right, to see what, because typically if someone's calling out in the ER, it's not
bad.
Good. Yeah, it's usually not good. But,
well, you said you've been working here 5 years, so.
Yeah, I've been working here about 5 years.
So you're already prepped for something bad?
Well, not necessarily like this. This is definitely unusual for us, but yeah, for bad stuff. If you hear someone kind of calling out, you always go check to see if they need help, basically.
And could you tell if the baby was alive or
they did not look alive.
It didn't look alive.
But also, I think the time had passed since she left the bathroom and it being in the bag, it was just.
How long do you think that was?
Maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. I just have to guess. I don't know.
And after the doctor went in and told her she was pregnant, did you have any other contact with her after that?
With the patient?
Mm-hmm.
I might have went in to have her sign some paperwork, but that was probably we had to transfer her to get OB care post.
Did you have any contact with the baby after that?
All we did, we brought the baby up. We called the doctor, obviously, out of the room from her exam, and we came in, kind of doc assessed the baby, and basically determined it was not viable to completely work the baby and all of that. So that was about the extent of it.
Okay. So and then your last contact was doing paperwork to transfer her out?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know of anybody else that would have had contact with her that we should talk to?
Marina Perez, she was the house supervisor. That's probably about it.
What did she do?
She came in and I don't exactly remember. She had a form of paperwork that she was helping fill out with.
Oh, so she's filling out paperwork.
Yeah, with the patient.
Did you see anything in the hallway? Any type of blood droplets or blood from the bathroom to the trauma room? Did you see anything?
I believe there was like maybe from footprints or something. There might have been blood coming from the restroom to the back to her room.
All right. Is there anything you think we should know about that we haven't asked?
Just not necessarily not like factual things, just
Yeah,
it seemed like we were being just deceived from the beginning. But that's just my take on it. It seemed like she was very manipulative with us. And
what did she appear like when she came in?
she,
I mean, could you tell? Because I know most women you can tell unless they're a large woman.
right?
She's a petite girl. Did you tell that maybe she was pregnant or?
I could not. She was very what would be the word? Not necessarily standoffish, but anytime you asked her to lay down, she would kind of maneuver away from you almost. It seemed like, thinking back, she wouldn't want you to kind of. It was at least what it seemed like to me. She didn't want you to discover, that she was pregnant, and she wore really baggy clothing. Yeah, and she wouldn't sit still for you. I'm sure she was very uncomfortable too, but yeah, she wouldn't allow you to do it.
All right. Can we get a
Okay, so that last bit of his statement is also extremely important. Of course, it is just his opinion, but at the same time, it is his witness perception of the situation. That is his account. And he feels as though she wouldn't let them get a good hold on her. And should that statement be allowed in, it is extremely damning. Their whole defense is that she didn't know she was pregnant because they really don't want the jury thinking that she knew she was going to do this the whole time. They do not want that in the jury's head. So essentially, it's a dead baby came out, and these incompetent hospital staff who already had not helped her properly and jacked her up on medications caused that, possibly, if anything. And she put the baby and disposed of it, and went back to the room to preserve her dignity and shame or whatever. That's the best way I can try and gloss over it and make a defense for her. Maybe they can pull on people's heartstrings about being embarrassed or whatever, the indignities of being a woman and birth and political stuff. Who knows? But again, that also runs a risk of offending a lot of people, unless you can strike every single person who is having any kind of strong feelings on laws regarding abortion and stuff like that. It comes pretty heavily into play. Because in my own personal opinion, I think even pro-life people would say that isn't they're these abortions for a reason. New Mexico is pretty lenient. Should you have known you were pregnant, you had all the ample opportunity to have a legally sustained abortion and not been in any trouble whatsoever in the state that you reside in, yet she chose not to. So I think even people who are against abortion would have thought that she should have had an abortion, so to speak. So I do think that it is very important for the defense to try and mitigate all these little pieces of evidence that are likely to come in that prove the manipulation, deception of the hospital staff, because those are they're very bad for the defense. They do not want everyone to think she intended to do this, that this was just some freak accident, and don't send this girl away for life for, one mistake. But I don't know if anyone tuned into the Hannah Payne trial at all that recently just happened, but she was a young woman who basically ran after, or chased after this man who was fleeing the scene of a crime fleeing the scene of an accident that he had caused, trying to get his vehicle information or whatever. And she ended up cutting him off and blocking him, and she pulled a weapon, and her defense was that they struggled over the weapon and he pulled the trigger. But she was indeed convicted of malice murder, aggravated assault with the deadly, all of the charges. They merge a bunch of the charges on sentencing. But she was convicted on all of them, and it took the jury an hour and 30 minutes. And so, these are a lot of odd instances recently where we're getting a lot of murder defendants testifying in their own trials. And it's been quite interesting, but it also does not seem to be working out well, seeing as Charlie Adelson was convicted in less than 4 hours after testifying in his own defense, Hannah Payne, less than 2 hours. A lot of these trials where there is an overwhelming amount of evidence, the jury does not need a bunch of time to decide. Okay, so real quick, I'm just going to play a very small snippet. I think it's like less than a minute long, of something very interesting that Charlie Adelson said in his jailhouse phone calls with his mother and I believe father at some point on this call as well. But just in this little snippet, he blames the blogs and everyone covering this that he didn't get a fair trial. And I just thought that was so interesting because here we are covering legal issues and legal aspects, and no one is convincing a jury, not even Court TV covering his case. No one is tainting or convincing juries prior to, these trials. That's just not happening. That's what the whole jury selection process is for. That is just, if they say they can be unbiased, then they can be unbiased. And that's what we have to take the jurors on their word at. Use your strikes accordingly. But it's just very interesting that after a guilty conviction, swift and quick, he is blaming everyone but himself. So let's check this out.
I'm not as true as I and it wasn't because of the evidence. It was because of the TV show. It was because of 2020. It was because of Dateline. It was because of the blogs. It was because of the podcast. It was because of the newspaper, the local stations, the out-of-town stations covering it, Court TV covering it. In a small-ass town, and you're an outsider from Miami. Rich, white, Jewish. Holy shit.
So yeah, just really interesting. He's right. It was a small little town, and I don't know so much about being the outsider or anything like that, but you did send people into this small town and cause issues. I believe there wasn't a lot of deaths or anything like that around these parts. It was pretty unheard of, right? So just so interesting that, convicted criminals will blame podcasts and bloggers and Court TV and everyone else and not, own up for their decisions. And his defense, much like Hannah Payne's defense, and what I think, in my opinion, is going to be similar to Alexee's defense, because the evidence in all these cases was pretty insurmountable. You cannot get over this. It's, I don't think there's room for reasonable doubt. One final thing I can mention about the triage nurse's statements, if you notice that he said they had to rip the bag open. There are multiple accounts of the bag needing to be ripped. We don't know if the bag was tied or not, and that is a definite spot for reasonable doubt to be played. That they can try to maybe convince the jury that the housekeeper tied that bag. Now, it makes no sense, in my opinion, because the housekeeper clearly said that she saw the baby in the bag and didn't do anything, right? She sees the baby in the bag, and it's clear there's a baby in the bag that was under the fresh liner. So that's one of the points that I think is really going to be hard for Alexee, because Alexis Avila's baby, in New Mexico, similar instance, was put in a bag, but the bag was not tied and the baby lived. But in Alexee's case, the bag was tied and the baby, according to the autopsy, died from being suffocated in the bag. So that's very interesting to me. We have multiple accounts of them saying the bag was tied, possible attempt to bring any doubt as to who tied the bag, but I really think that is not a great plan of action because, again, it's just blaming everyone else for the things you did. And in the closing statements in the Hannah Payne trial, the vigilante car lady who shot that man, and really for no reason, she had no right to be, going after him. The prosecutor said she had the audacity to blame everyone else for her actions in the closing statements. And I think something similar might be said to that in the Alexee case, because, again, it is very, the defense has, I'll put it this way, there's not a lot to work with defense-wise as to explain her actions other than to blame everyone else. But with that, you really run the risk of straight up offending the jury because the other evidence is so clear. So we are still in for a very interesting legal case. As far as right now, I don't think it showed the name. If you are interested in the Charlie Adelson jailhouse phone calls, I believe I'd seen some of them been posted when I was looking them up, but these ones are really, really good, and they have all the words popping up as best they can. And so it's this channel here, Pretty Lies and Alibis. If you are interested in listening to these jailhouse phone calls, it's very interesting on some of the parts where Charlie Adelson talks about their defense plan and not upsetting the jury. So I might actually even do a video on his statements because I've been kind of harping on these ideas from this side, just trying to convince everyone and tell everyone this is something you run the risk of in criminal defense. But now I can actually show you, because he's talking about what he talked about with his attorney. I mean, it's, these are privileged conversations that we are getting access to because he's sharing them. And so, we get to hear why and how they thought they were going to piss off the jury. And that is so intricate and so interesting to me, especially in a case like Alexee's, right? Because people are going to definitely have emotions about it. Even if they can say they're not biased, the evidence is going to make them feel things. So with all that being said, thank you so much if you made it this far in this video. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, please leave them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And I do genuinely enjoy the conversation. If you're interested in following the Alexee case to trial, please subscribe as I will be covering it all along the way with a legal focus. It's your girl Friday. I'll see you in the next video. Okay, bye.